Michael, we were able to help you this time. But if this happens again, I can't promise we'll be able to do the same.
Michael, we tried an experiment. We hope it might help you. We interviewed the people closest to you, but there was one condition. They had to answer as if you were already gone. Take a look. Who was he to you? My husband. My best friend. Once. That sounds strange now, I guess, because toward the end we barely talked.
My dad. I was proud of him. I really was.
My son. I know he was 48. I know he had a wife, a son, a job, his own life. But he was still my boy. I don't think that ever really changes.
My best friend. At least that's what I always called him. We met when we were 19. We had no money, no real jobs, no idea what we were doing with our lives. But we had all the time in the world.
He was the guy I never had to worry about. If he said something would get done, it got done. Honestly, people like that are rare.
But there was a time when I knew everything about him. How he took his coffee. How he slept when something was bothering him. The little thing he did when he was pretending everything was fine. I used to know what kind of day he'd had just by the way he opened the front door. He was always like that. Even when he was little, he had to be doing something. Building something, taking something apart, trying to fix things that weren't even broken. He could never just sit still.
When I was little, I used to tell everybody my dad was the busiest person in the world. For some reason, I thought that was cool.
We could sit in the kitchen all night arguing about nothing. At 2 in the morning, one of us could say, "Let's go somewhere," and we'd go. We didn't even need a reason.
Then he started coming home after I was already asleep. And one day I realized I knew the man I lived with less than I had 10 years earlier. But he was still my husband.
His phone was always ringing. He was always going somewhere, fixing something. Somebody always needed him. That's what a successful grown-up looks like. For a long time, I wanted to be exactly like him. I'm not so sure anymore.
When everybody else went home, Michael stayed. When somebody had to go out and nobody could, Michael went.
Was he always so driven? Yes. Sometimes too much. Even as a boy, if he decided he was going to do something, that was it. You couldn't talk him out of it. His father used to say he was stubborn. I always thought he was determined.
If a client called at 6 in the morning, he answered. If they called at midnight, he answered.
When he started working, I remember asking him once what he was working so hard for. He said, "So one day I won't have to worry about anything." I remember that very clearly. And I said, "Michael, you'll always find something to worry about."
And anytime somebody asks, "You got a best friend?" I'd say, "Yeah, Michael." Funny thing is, by then I could go months without seeing my best friend. But if your car died at 2 in the morning, you could call him. If you needed money, he'd lend it. If somebody messed with you, Michael would have been the first one there. He was the kind of guy you'd trust with your life. It just got harder and harder to trust him with an evening.
Did he love you? Yes. Absolutely. I never doubted that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course he did. I never thought he didn't. That's kind of the weird part. I always knew he loved me. I just didn't always feel like he knew me.
He wasn't cold. He remembered everything. My birthday, our anniversary, how I took my coffee, which flowers I hated.
He knew what classes I was taking. He knew my grades. He knew when I had practice. But he didn't know I'd quit the team for almost 3 weeks. He found out because my coach called him.
Did he love you?
Yeah, I think he did. Michael wasn't the kind of guy who talked about that stuff. We never said I love you to each other. That would have been weird for us.
Did you see him often? Not as often as I would have liked. He called. He always called. Sometimes from the car, sometimes between meetings. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. He always found a way to fit me in. Every morning before work, he'd kiss me goodbye. Even when he was running late. Even if we'd had a fight. He'd get to the door, take 2 steps back, and kiss me. And one day I had this weird thought. A kiss is actually kind of long. A few seconds. And I realized that some days that kiss lasted longer than every conversation we'd have for the rest of the day. So yes, he loved me. I just learned that loving someone and being there for them are not the same thing. I used to ask him to come for dinner. He'd say, Sunday, I promise. And then Sunday would come and something would happen. Work, a phone call, some problem. After a while, I stopped cooking extra. I knew he loved me. I just stopped expecting him to come. What's the moment with him you remember most? Not our wedding. Not our first kiss. Not even when our son was born. Funny, right?
Saturday mornings. When I was a kid, sometimes he'd wake me up really early and we'd go get breakfast. Just us. He'd let me order pancakes even though my mom said I had to eat something real. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
We were 23. We were driving across the country in this piece of junk car that had no business being on the highway. Middle of the night. It just died.
The thing I remember most was just some random night when we'd only been married a little while. We had no money. Our car broke down. It was pouring and we had to walk home.
Then I got older. Saturday mornings turned into maybe next week. Then eventually I stopped asking. The stupid thing is, I don't even really care about the pancakes. I just liked having him to myself for an hour.
Phone's almost dead. Maybe $40 between us. No clue how far the next town was. And for some reason, we weren't even pissed. We pulled 2 beers out of the trunk, sat on the hood, and watched the sun come up.
Halfway there, Michael just stopped and took off his shoes. I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "We're already soaked. What difference does it make now?" Then he started walking barefoot through the puddles. I laughed so hard I could barely move. He took my hand. We had nowhere we needed to be.
I asked him, you think 20 years from now we'll still do stuff like this? He said, of course. I said, even if we're rich and important? He laughed and said, especially if we're rich and important.
Years later, every time he'd text, "Gonna be late?" I'd think about that night. Because once upon a time, he could spend 2 hours doing nothing but walking next to me.
20-something years later, I asked him if he wanted to drive that same road again. Just us. No families, no work, one weekend. He said, great idea. Let's do it after this project. I never asked again.
Were you angry with him? No. Maybe sometimes frustrated, but angry? No. You don't stay angry with your child for being exactly who you raised him to be. I was proud of how hard he worked. Maybe I told him that too often. Did you ever tell him to slow down?
Probably not enough. Honestly, when someone keeps saying yes, you stop asking whether they should. You just start asking them again. I did that. A lot.
When did you realize he wasn't really there anymore? It wasn't one day. Honestly, I think it would have been easier if it had been. There was no huge fight, no affair, no slammed door. I just stopped waiting for him for dinner. Then I stopped cooking for two. Then I stopped texting, "Are you coming home?" Then I stopped getting angry. I think that was the moment. Not when I stopped loving him. I didn't. It was when his absence started to feel normal. I don't miss him now. I missed him when he was still with us. If he were sitting here now, what would you tell him?
I don't know.
I wouldn't tell him to work less. I told him that 100 times. He'd always say, "I'm doing this for you guys." And I'd say, I know you were doing it for us."
I think I'd tell him I'm not mad. Not really. I'd tell him I know he was trying. I know he thought he was doing the right thing.
I'd probably apologize first. Because it's easy to sit here and say Michael was always too busy. But I stopped calling too. I got used to it too. We'll catch up later.
I'd tell him to sit down. Just sit down. Turn the phone off. Stay for dinner. Let somebody else solve the problem for once. The world will survive without you for an evening.
But I'd tell him something else too. I didn't need him to give me a better life. I needed him to be in the one I already had. I just wish he'd understood that sooner.
I'd say, remember that car? That night? That sunrise? And if he said, yeah, I remember, I'd say, then let's go. Not tomorrow. Not after the project. Not when things calm down. Now.
And I'd tell him I was proud of him. I always was. But I wish I'd told him I would have been just as proud if he'd done less. He never had to earn that from me. He was my son. That was enough. We just didn't need the life you were trying so hard to give us. We needed you. And I'd ask him for one thing. Just once. When you say, I'm on my way, actually come home.
I'd tell him he was good at his job. He already knew that. Then I'd probably tell him something I should have said years ago. Michael, go home. We'll figure it out tomorrow.
Route to home is ready.
Hello?
Hey, Michael. How have you been? Haven't seen you in a while. Sorry to bother you, but our server just went down and I can't get hold of any of your guys. Think you could help us out? Michael? You there?
Yeah, I'm on my way.